You're listening to RV Dream Radio. We're at the Quartzsite RV show, and we are talking to Carolyn. Is Bettes the right way? Bettes, okay.
I'm with the Alaska-Carolyn Industry Association, which is the marketing arm of the state of Alaska tourism promotion effort. So
is it the government? The state of Alaska?
We're contracted with the government. So
I got you.
We have the contract to do the marketing for the state of Alaska.
I got you. And you're down here for the RV show to tell people about coming up and RVing in Alaska. And it's a very popular thing. There are a lot of people that do it. But as I was just telling you, I don't know anything about it. You basically, if you're going to drive from Carmel, California, where I live, you're going to have to go to Bellingham, and then you're going through the British Columbia to get there. So most of the trip up is actually through Canada, right?
Yep. Well, there's a variety of ways.
See how smart I am?
Well, there's a variety of ways to do it. And one of the things we do here at the show is that we try to help people with that planning process to help them understand the variety of ways that there are. For example, if you're coming up from Carmel, California with your motorhome, RV, camper, fifth wheel, you're going to come up through most likely California, Oregon, Washington, and once you get to Bellingham, Washington, you have an option. You have the option of either hopping on the Alaska State Ferry with your vehicle. You can get a cab and you can camp on deck, or you can continue driving in through British...
Get a cab? What does that mean?
Cabin.
Oh. Mm-hmm. Right. But you can stay in your RV on the ferry?
No. You cannot stay in your RV on the ferry.
They put it in another place.
It's down on a car deck, and you're not allowed, once the ferry is in motion, you're not allowed to be down there. So they bring everybody up to the deck while the ferry is in motion. And then you're allowed, though, if you have a pet, you can go down during a certain period of time during the day, kind of an overseen time of the day, go down and take care of your pet, then you come back up. You're not allowed to stay with your vehicle.
Gotcha.
But anyway, so you have the option of getting on the ferry in Bellingham, or you can drive through British Columbia.
Now, I'm sorry, Carolyn, let me go back
please.
to that. If I do that, now I have to have the concept of I need a passport to go to Alaska. If you're on the ferry, do you still need a passport? Or because you're going through British Columbia?
Not if you get on in Bellingham and get off in Ketchikan.
Gotcha.
You don't. Because you're going from U.S. port to U.S. port.
Gotcha. Okay.
But if you continue driving up through British Columbia, now you're in Canada, so you do need the passport, you can board the Alaska State Ferry system in Prince Rupert, which is still in British Columbia. And then you take that on into the southeast part of Alaska. Once you're doing that, now you have the option of stopping at various ports in small communities in southeast Alaska. So you can get off the ferry, spend some time, look around, camp, and then get back on the ferry, continue on to another port of call. While you're in the southern part of southeast Alaska, you have an option of using a private ferry system called the Inter-Island Ferry Authority, which will take you from either Ketchikan, Petersburg, or Wrangell to Prince of Wales Island, which is the third largest island in the United States, second largest island in Alaska, only beat by Kodiak. First largest island in the United States is the Big Island of Hawaii. But anyway, that's just a little trivia for you.
Yes, thank you.
So you've got about 1,100 miles of road that you can explore on Prince of Wales Island before you get back on the ferry system, and then join the Alaska State Ferry. The Alaska State Ferry again, which you can take all the way up to Skagway or Haines. And when you're talking about this, it's really helpful to be looking at a map so people can understand just the logistics, the distance.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things that we really try to help people with are the logistics, understanding we are a big state. Ketchikan is closer to Seattle in Washington state than it is to Anchorage, which is still in the state of Alaska.
Is that right?
Oh,
That's another interesting bit of trivia.
We have some great little statistics. I'll try to throw in a few more as we talk.
That's good.
But so you take the ferry all the way to Skagway or Haines, and then you come north, still with your vehicle. You have to come through the Yukon Territory. Now you're coming back into Canada. You travel through the Yukon Territory before you get back into Alaska. So then you have any number of things you can do once you're in the state of Alaska.
So if you want to drive up there and not take the ferry anyway, you're going all the way through
British Columbia.
Is it the Day-Ho Highway or
there's a couple different There's a couple different systems, road systems you can take, but you're going to come through either Alberta. So you can come in, if you're coming in through eastern Washington, you're going to come in through Alberta or Idaho, come in through Alberta, and you can see that you can take the Alaska Highway on up.
Is that what that's called right there? The
Alcan, Alaska Highway. Or this is the Cassier Highway. You can come this way.
Gotcha.
And then you take this highway, the Alaska Highway, in through Whitehorse, and then continue. At Whitehorse, you have an option. You can come this way, Dawson City, top of the world highway to Tok, or you come this way through Haines Junction, Burwash Landing, and you come to Tok. Tok is the only city in Alaska that you have to go through twice. I mean, you have to go through twice if you're driving into Alaska. You come into it once as you enter the state, and you go back through it as you exit the state. It's the only way to do it if you're driving.
Oh, I see. So that's the crossroads right there.
That's it.
Gotcha.
And then you can obviously head north, Fairbanks. Some people will come all the way. They want the adventure of driving the Dalton Highway almost up to Prudhoe Bay, to Dead Horse. Some people continue on back down to Denali National Park. This is a Denali Highway that you can drive. Head on down to Anchorage, Kenai Peninsula, cross here over to Glen Allen, down to Valdez. And what we do as the state of Alaska, as the Alaska Travel Industry Association, is we try to make it easier to understand the options, because it can be very overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
We're a big state. Here's a statistic, or here's something I like to tell people. From here to here, this is the length of the Alaska pipeline. From here to here, that's 800 miles.
Wow.
So when you start realizing if that's 800 miles, this is 350. But you know what? Lots of times we don't talk mileage distance. We talk about how long it takes to get there. Because when people talk about, well, you know, how far is it from Anchorage to Homer, let's say. Here's Anchorage, here's Homer. It depends on how you're getting there. Do you want to stop along the way? Right off the top of my head, I can't even tell you how far it is from Anchorage to Homer. I've got to look it up on my mileage guide. If you're driving it, it's probably about 5 hours or so. If you're flying, it's an hour. You know, if you're RVing, it's a month.
Yeah, right.
It really depends. But here's this is my favorite description of distance. If you look down here between Skagway and Haines, here's Skagway. Here's Haines. It's at the north end of the Lynn Canal, which is the end of the Inside Passage. This is the ferry goes to both Skagway and Haines. People say, well, how long does it take me to get from Skagway to Haines? If you fly, which you can do, it'll take you 10 minutes. Skagway, Haines, to fly it. It's very close. If you take a boat, if you take the ferry, it's an hour. Skagway to Haines. If you drive the highway from Skagway to Haines. Skagway to Haines is 9 hours to go up and around. 17 hours is Anchorage to Whitehorse. That's 17 hours.
Because you're having to go around mountains, is that it?
Yep.
That's it.
Because there's mountains and there's a pass you go over to get to Haines.
One of the questions has got to be for those people who are not that thrilled with driving their 45-footer on dangerous mountainous roads, is when you're touring Alaska, are you going to be dealing with a lot of that? Are you going to be dealing with a lot of treacherous roads?
You're not going to be dealing with a lot of treacherous roads. I mean, there's a couple of passes, but I wouldn't call them treacherous roads. For the most part, the Alaska Highway and the road, you know, the roads in Alaska, they're paved. Somebody described them as secondary roads in good condition.
Right.
It depends on how you drive it. You know, it depends on your driving style. We like to encourage people to be smart about the way they drive the conditions. When you hear the stories about people who have had 5 flat tires and 2 busted windshields, I usually want to say, how fast were you driving? And what were the conditions?
Well, when you're in an RV, most RVers are going to do it, you know, just as safely as possible. There's not too many hot rider RVers out there.
We know the stories that get shared are the ones that had the most excitement, the most, you know, there's not as much of a story in saying, you know, it was fine. We didn't have a single flat tire. That's a little calmer. But when you have
But that road that you're looking at there in the picture, I mean, that's pretty...
that's pretty typical. That's pretty
So
typical.
you'll have a lot of 2-lane, 3-lane, that sort of thing.
And actually,
pretty amazing. Where would you think that was?
Oh, that's about 40 miles outside of Palmer. So here's Palmer, right here. Here's Anchorage. Here's Palmer. And this is called the Glen Highway because it goes to Glen Allen. So this is called the Glen Highway. We don't use route numbers very often. We have names for the highways. Right. So this is the Glen Highway, about 40 miles. You're just outside of Sutton. And that picture is actually looking east. You're looking east.
What do most RVers do? Do they mostly get on the ferry, would you say, or what's your take on what the average RVer? Now that I've learned what I've learned, which I should have learned a long time ago, is because I talk to a lot of people who go to Alaska, who RV to Alaska. And now that I look at it, I should have asked them some more questions, which is how'd you get there, where were you?
Yep.
But do most people, RVers aren't they're very reticent to give up their RVs and go stay in a cabin. So most people drive through.
This is just a gut feeling, and my sense is maybe 25%. That's just a gut feeling. I don't have an actual statistic on that, and that's a very good question. But maybe 25% use the ferry system. Now, Southeast Alaska is going to be your longest route on the ferry, tip that people will most often use. You can also use it for a short stint between Valdez and Whittier, and there's quite a few people who do that. You can also take the Alaska ferry system out to Kodiak Island. Some people will do that, and the truly adventurous with extra time will actually take the ferry all the way out the Aleutian chain.
Oh, wow.
So you can do that too.
That must be something right there, huh?
Yeah, it's on my list of things still to do. I mean, I've flown out there, but I've never had the time or the opportunity to take the ferry out there. But we have a very extensive ferry system because so much of Alaska is on the coast. And there's quite a number of communities that are on the coast. So if you don't get on the water at some point, you're missing a good piece of what Alaska has to offer.
If you take this road inland, and a lot of this is very flat,
some of it
you're going to get there pretty quick.
Relatively.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You're going to miss all of this.
You're going to miss the inside passage. You're going to miss the coastal waterway. If people choose not to take the ferry or do anything in Southeast Alaska, they still have a chance to see some of the coastal side of Alaska. In South Central Alaska, we have, like I said, the Valdez to Whittier. People can also take a ferry down to Cordova, and people do that. It's accessible with an RV only by ferry. You can't drive there. But there's a road system in Cordova that takes them out to a very photogenic glacier called Child's Glacier, and a very active glacier. So that can be a wonderful trip. But the other thing, so Cordova is a coastal village you have to take the ferry to. Valdez you can drive to. You can drive to Whittier, which is a coastal community. You can drive down to Seward, coastal. You can drive along here, Kasilof, Ninilchik, Anchor Point, Homer is a coastal community. So you still have the chance to do some, to spend some time on the coast of Alaska. And one thing I encourage people to do is to do something they can't do with the RV. Park it. Park it and do something that gets you off the road system. So go fishing. Take a glacier cruise, go flight seeing, something else, because it is such an important part of who we as Alaska are.
Right, well, you can go up there and stay for a long time and just see different stuff, as big as it is.
Yep.
You can do that at the same time. Yep. But are you going to, I want to be sure to tell our listeners what they need to prepare for when they take this trip, and a lot of that, the answer to that question is which way you're going to go, right?
Yep.
You could take the trip up and then come back the waterway, and I would imagine a lot of people do that.
Yes.
But you wouldn't dare take this trip without a passport now with the new laws that we have.
You need to have your documentation.
Because you may just pop into Canada at any time, right?
Well, again, whether you're taking the ferry or you're driving, if you're coming all the way to Alaska, you have got to go through Canada. You can't do it without coming through Canada.
If you're driving.
If you're driving.
But even if you're taking the ferry and you're driving around, the chances are you going back over into that territory, that's possible.
If you take the ferry, very few people, there are people who will take the ferry. There's a couple times a month, there's a ferry that'll go all the way up to, I think it'll go into Valdez and into Whittier. I'd have to double check on the actual schedule. But the majority of people, if they're coming to Alaska and they're using the ferry, they're going to get off the ferry in Skagway or Haines, and they're going to drive through the Yukon.
Yeah.
So there is no way to get to Alaska with your RV, not taking the ferry there. There's no way to do it without coming through Canada.
Now, what about, we're dog people, so what about if you're going into Canada as far as dogs are concerned?
You need to have visited your vet and gotten all the paperwork. You need to get your rabies shot and have proof of that. Most vets, if you go to see them and you tell them we're taking our dog through Canada, they know what to give you. They know the paperwork.
So there's certain shots and everything. So you want to make sure that. What else is very important for them to know and take with them on the trip to Alaska?
Okay. I think, for one thing, doing some research before you go. That's probably the most important thing to take with you.
They're listening to RV Dream Radio. It's very, here's the start here.
Here's what you need. Yep.
Okay.
You need to contact the provinces, the territories, the states that you're going to be visiting so that you can get the most up-to-date information from them. We provide a couple of different things. We provide an Alaska vacation planner. The Yukon provides a vacation planner as well. And then we provide a publication that's specific to the RV driver, the person who's driving to Alaska. We provide this North to Alaska. How do people get this? They can contact us, and I'll give you a phone number. I can give you a website. Here at the show, we're asking people to complete this card. Tell us when they're thinking about traveling and how they're going to do it, and then we send this information to them. So that's one way to get it.
Can you get basically the same information off your website?
Yes.
Yeah, so you get a lot of information from your website.
Yep.
And what is it? What is it?
TravelAlaska.com.
TravelAlaska.com.
Yep.
And that way, and your job there is to inform them and tell them all the different things, not only how to get there, but all the different things that you can see.
Right.
And the other question I have is how RV friendly Alaska is. In other words, if you want to pull over and stay the night, I mean, what kind of laws? That really varies in the U.S. from state to state.
Right.
What's it like in Alaska?
Well, in Alaska, we encourage people to use the park system. We have both private parks and public parks, and we share information about how to get all that information. Alaska's majority of land is public lands, and so we provide access into a lot of those public lands through the state parks, national parks, Fish and Game, Bureau of Land Management, Forest Service. So there's a lot of public lands managers, and they all have their own information about what's available in their lands, in their accessible lands.
Right.
To get that, you go to an organization, or it's not an organization, basically a source called the Alaska Public Lands Information Center. And we give you the phone number for that, and we can also give you a website for it. But I recommend contacting them. If you don't contact them ahead of time, you will come into contact with them for the first time in Tok, where they have an office. And you can stop there and you can pick up information about the public campgrounds. It tells you what kind of amenities are available, how many sites are available, the size of the sites. You can call ahead and make reservations if there's someplace you really want to stay.
But if you want to dry camp?
Well, you can do dry camp there, but also along the way you'll see that there are pullouts. There's wide places in the road.
Right.
There's, there's like wide parking areas. There's gravel pits. In fact, we have gravel pits, and people who stay there, we tend to call them pitters.
Really?
So because they're staying at the gravel pit.
Yeah.
You'll see whole groups staying there. The only time you can't stay there is if there's a sign that says you can't.
That's
It'll
it.
be one of those no camping signs.
So the point is, it's very free. It's very loose. Where I live, Highway 1, if you pull off and try to stay the night, the highway patrol will be there real quick and make you move. So
no, of course we encourage people to use our public lands and the private campgrounds. There's an organization called Alaska-Campground Owners Association that produce a map that shows all of their private campgrounds, and of course they have all the amenities from, the hookups, of course, but cable and
fairly
Wi-Fi.
Reasonable, or pretty much on par with the U.S.
Pretty much on par. That's
Hello,
okay.
Hello. Alaska is part of the U.S., by the way.
Yeah. We call it the lower 48. But you know what? You'll find people in Alaska who call it the States. So you're fine. You're just fine. But yeah, it's probably comparable. The more amenities, the better the site, the more view. They can ask a little bit more, so they do.
So are there any things that we need to tell them? I always like to warn them about anything. Is there anything that we should warn them about places not to go and things? Gun laws, there you go. That's a good one.
Yep, that's a good one. Gun laws. You are allowed only to take a shotgun into Canada. You have to, of course, register. You got to tell them you have it when you go through customs. There's people who like to have handguns, and you have to mail them from home, or before you get into Canada, you can mail them to a registered dealer. Now, I would always check to see what the most current information is, and so we refer people.
And this is Alaska we're talking about.
Well, you have. Alaska doesn't have the regulations that Canada does.
Right, so it's Canadian gun laws.
Canadian gun laws.
Okay.
And so that's why we like to refer people to the Canadian Firearms Center, because I would much rather that people get the information from the source rather than me. When it comes to government regulations, I really want people to contact the source directly.
Right.
Because we provide that information, so we really hope people will.
And you have this information on the website, which is called
TravelAlaska.com.
TravelAlaska.com. So you can get all this information on the website as well for people that are watching this and now want to go over there and start planning a trip to Alaska.
Absolutely.
It's actually not that big a deal, is it? I mean, if you're in Bellingham, you're talking 3 hours by ferry. I mean, 3 days, pardon me.
3 days. Yeah.
A little different.
Flying,
but it's not weeks.
About 3.5 hours.
But it's not weeks.
No.
So in 3 days, you can go from the corner of Bellingham to you're back in Skagway.
Yes.
God, see how much I'm learning? I'm so proud of myself.
Well, you definitely came to the right place to learn some of this stuff.
Right.
So.
And I should have been here a long time ago, because RVing in Alaska, that is just a big deal.
Well, it's so interesting. Stand our booth for a few hours, and you're going to get so many amazing stories about people's trips to Alaska, how many times they've done the trip. I mean, we run the full gamut, from people who come up to us and say, can you really take an RV to Alaska? Can I take my fifth wheeler? My rig's 40 feet long. Can I do that?
Right.
So people who know nothing and have heard nothing and are a little afraid because they don't know.
Absolutely.
To people who say, gosh, I'm going up for the 6th time this year. I've never had a better trip. It's the best trip we've ever taken.
Right.
People have been so friendly, we did so much, and we can't wait to go back and do even more.
Right.
So it runs the full gamut, and sometimes I just step back and let the people talk to each other.
Yeah.
And share their stories.
Yeah, everybody loves it. There's companies now that provide caravanning.
Yes.
Special tours right from someplace.
From wherever their starting point is. Yeah.
Right, so there's a lot of those tours.
Yes.
But as many people as have been coming to Alaska and RVing in Alaska, you're here because you want more people to come.
Yes. Absolutely.
I mean, otherwise you wouldn't be here.
Absolutely.
Unless this is stop coming to Alaska.
Yeah, right. But no, this is please come to Alaska. And it's great to be here and to share information with people, encourage them to make the trip, provide them with information that says you can do it. The road is paved. We always have construction. We always have frost heaves. We're a northern climate, so there's always going to be something to watch out for. But you can do it. And so to let people know that it's possible, to encourage them to come back and tell us their stories, to encourage them to use our member services, to take flight seeing trips and stay in wonderful campgrounds and, get out on the glacier cruise.
So on the website you have a member services. You have a lot of things like that they can tap into as well.
Definitely. Just tell us, just look at the part of the state where you want to go, click on that. Click on any particular interest you have, fishing, for example, and we've got lots of information.
What's the internet like up there as you're traveling around?
It's good.
Verizon Wireless?
It's good. Somebody asked me about Verizon the other day, and I think all these providers are using each other's towers. There's pockets of places where you can't get any service.
Sure.
But I'll tell you something. Not too long ago, I was up in Nome. Nome, way north, and they just got they had internet, dial-up, but they just now got cell phone service finally. And when you go into some of these small villages, which you can't drive to, you've got to fly to, they now have cell phone service. So you go in this little town where the only travel is by four-wheeler and snow machine, dog sled, and yet they're carrying cell phones now.
Hey, I want to do that. I want to have my laptop on a dog sled.
Wouldn't
that be just the coolest thing to do?
And you know what? You can even go dog sledding in the summer. Most people travel to Alaska between mid-May and mid-September. And one of the questions they always have is, what's it like in the winter? So we try to provide winter information. Some people come up by RV the first time and come up during the winter to see the dog sled races and to participate with that. But for those who can't, there are demonstrations, dog sled demonstrations that you can participate in. There's a variety of dog sled kennels that invite you to the kennel, talk to you about what dog sledding is all about, let you ride on a wheeled sled and have the dogs pull you so you can get a sense of what that's all about. You get to pet the puppies, take your picture with a famous Iditarod musher. I mean, it's really possible. And if you really want to get on the snow, then there's options where you can park the RV, get in get in a ski plane, fly up to a glacier, and there's a dog team waiting for you.
Wow.
You can actually
really?
get up there on the glacier and
my.
go dog sledding. Yeah.
What? So an unbelievable number of adventures that you could have.
Unbelievable number.
That's really great.
Lots to do. Yep.
And when do you think is the best time to go to Alaska for RVers?
You know,
anytime from when to when?
Well, mid-May to mid-September is the time when people travel. And so we start seeing motorhomes coming into Anchorage probably the end of April. And then we don't see too many after the end of September.
Right.
So, you know, the best time, there's something, each month offers something special. You know, I love the long days of summer. I love May. It's crisp and clear.
No, that's something we didn't
fresh.
mention. Right now, how much daylight do you have? Not very much, right?
Well,
6 hours.
Actually, it depends on where you are in the state because we're so large that when you're talking daylight hours, you know, if you're up here, you still don't have any. If you're down here, Ketchikan, you got what, 8?
Yeah, the December 31st, we have, like, our 21st, the longest, shortest day of the year, we still have 5 or 6 hours of
Yeah.
daylight.
Yep.
But it never gets totally dark.
No. I mean, never gets total, no. But when you come up here to Anchorage, we probably, at the shortest, the sun's rising about 10 o'clock and the sun's setting about 3:30. We have long twilights and long dawns. So it's never totally dark here. Of course, the closer you get to the Arctic Circle, the more darkness you have.
Sure.
More darkness.
Right.
So once you kind of turn that over and look back into spring, the closer you get to the Arctic Circle, the closer you are to that absolute 24 hours daylight.
Right. So July you'll have what, 20, 24?
Oh yeah, 20 hours daylight.
20 hours of daylight in July.
Yep.
That's great. Well, this is a fabulous story. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to kind of introduce people to that haven't been to Alaska.
Absolutely.
And the website is called travelalaska.com.
That's
See,
right.
it's finally ringing in there somewhere.
You got it.
But we'll have a link for it on RV Dream Radio's website as well.
Perfect.
So under Alaska, so they won't have to remember it. They can just go to the link.
Good.
But it really is a fascinating story and kind of opening up sort of a dark area that, you know, a lot of RVers, including myself, don't know much about. But now we do. I'm educated.
Well, we're so happy to spread the word and share the information.
It's great. Well, it's great to have you down here in Quartzsite. Are you enjoying your trip down here?
Oh, very much.
It's a little different, isn't it?
It's very different, actually, coming down here to Quartzsite.
Especially in January.
Oh, yeah. But this is our 5th time here at the show.
It is, huh?
Yep. And one of the things I love about this is, like I said, the chance to talk with people again and again and help them build their confidence about traveling to Alaska and the Yukon, help them become more familiar with the services that are available to them, and then eventually hearing what a great trip they had when they come back.
Exactly. Carolyn Bettes, thank you very much for joining us on RV Dream Radio.
My
We thank you.
pleasure. My pleasure.